Let's talk industrial marketing. I'm Joseph Lewin with Cadena's Part Solutions, and today's conversation is with Stefanie Casimir. Stefanie has roughly 20 years of experience in the industrial marketing space. She's done everything from marketing communications to strategic marketing, and now she's focused on product marketing in the motor manufacturing space. Today, we're going to be talking about how to differentiate commodity parts in the market and how product marketing can help you think a little bit differently and position your products for success. How do you make commodity parts stand out in the market?
It's sometimes very difficult for commodity parts to stand out. I work for a motor manufacturer, and a lot of our motors are predefined, in the market, and we sell what is typically a commodity product because all the dimensions are defined, the efficiency levels are defined, certain components even, of what we need to use to build a motor are predefined, and how it needs to perform sometimes is defined as well. So when everybody and all your competitors are held to the same standard, then how do you differentiate, and that's where I think product marketing comes in, and you could talk about other aspects of the product, your brand reputation, how you build the product, where it's built, how you service the market, and how you make it easy or difficult, for customers to choose a product, one over the other within the market. How you differentiate that product and go to market is a big piece of how you can stand out, I guess, within a commoditized market.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of component manufacturers, and it's a challenge both with examples like you gave where there's an outside standards organization or outside standards that you have to adhere to exactly, and then there's other products that they're just so similar that it's hard to, even if you don't have that limitation, it's still hard to create something that's so radically different that it's just going to sell itself without some of these other factors that you're talking about. So I think this is a really interesting and on-point conversation for a lot of people that we work with because they're going to be running into exactly the same things where there's a shop down the street that sells something similar, or there's a manufacturer in China that sells a similar product and it gets listed on Amazon, and then it's a matter of how do you figure out how to differentiate those products. So so how do you position a commodity product? What are some of the factors that you want to consider when you have that limitation of a commodity part?
Yeah, so you try to, create some sort of competitive advantage, whether that is having a truly differentiated product. If everything else about the product is predefined, what isn't, and sometimes for a motor, it's not the housing or the size or how it operates, but it may be some of the other components within the motor, the sealing, the bearing, how we test our products and how we position that in terms of this is a truly differentiated product. Or, can you be the lowest cost provider? And I say cost here, not price, because sometimes you can't be the lowest price, and that's an advantage in itself too. But cost means different things to different customers. And so there's a lower cost perception if, you're able to deliver on time, if you have the availability for your product, if you have components always in stock and you're reliable in that sense, a lot of times, it's not like for like pricing. Like you said, there are other competitors out there that are able to produce the same motor for cheaper, based off country of origin, as an example. Sometimes customers and end users are willing to pay 15-20% of a premium, for instance, for a made in US product. So, again, you try to position your products in a way, the more storytelling you can do behind the product, the more you can talk about it, I think helps differentiate that product from and stand out from the rest of the competition.
Yeah, and those are some good differentiation that you give there on price versus on being low cost, because there's other factors involved in that too. Like, with availability, that plays into cost, and you mentioned that. But if you're able to get them the product faster and they can go to market faster, they're going to save money, and there's opportunity costs involved with that. And so figuring out how to position the availability against maybe a cheaper product and showing how that makes it lower cost over the lifetime of the product when you're able to get it to them faster and they can get it out to market. Especially if you're working in more of like a one-off situation where they're not designing something that goes into full production, but maybe they're designing something that goes in individual facilities. They might need to be able to get those really quickly versus, if they're ordering 5,000 motors and they need them in 6 months, that's kind of a,
Right.
like you were saying, different customers will have different needs in that way to make it low cost. And then something else that factors into that too would be, maintenance could be part of that. So the reliability of your part can also make it the lowest cost, even if has a premium price, and being able to tell a story around being lower cost because of less need for maintenance or the longevity of the product itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think how you position your product to your target audience, whether that is, an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, isn't going to always buy a premium product. They don't really care, not always, about a highly differentiated product, with all the bells and whistles. Sometimes, something that just meets all of the minimum requirements and it checks all the boxes and it helps their equipment run, through the warranty period is their goal, and there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes an end user is, maybe they're strapped for their maintenance team and they can't always address certain things, and they'll be willing to pay for condition monitoring, for instance, or those smart sensors and stuff that are accessories to a product that help sell it, because it helps their overall cost, whether it's not the purchase price of the motor at that time. It's the overall cost of operation that they have to take a look at. And a lot of things come into factor for that, I think. And it's not just your product and the positioning of that in terms of, the marketing, the product of it, the features, the pricing. Sometimes it's what else are you able to provide? What else is in your bag of goods? I think those also do make a difference, why certain customers buy from you.
Yeah. So what role does your brand reputation and relationship with channel partners and distributors, what role do you see that playing in how you position your product to the market?
It's huge. This is, they're a key player in how we go to market. It's our go-to-market strategy. As an industrial component manufacturer in the business, we don't go directly to our end users. We don't go onto the factory floor and replace motors. We rely on our distributors heavily. And because it's commoditized products, a lot of our competitors too produce the same products, and it's on the distributor shelves. And so which products are they going to hold on their shelves, and are they going to push for you? So when it comes to your channel partners, it has to be compelling enough. You have to have something that stands out. Obviously, they're going to have their own targets of, margin is going to be really important to the distributors. They want to be able to make a profit off your products. But at the same time, are you dependable? Can they rely on you as a solid supply chain, partner in that sense? Can you position your products in a way that end users are going to want to specify, I want a motor A over motor B, and being able to provide that to them. I think that's really important in terms of, the channel aspect. And if they don't know how to choose your product, then they can't push it for you. So, positioning and product selection tools that you're able to provide. Right now, we're talking a lot about PIM data, product information, that the attributes behind the data and how easily that is incorporated into your channel partners' e-commerce tools.
I see.
Those kind of things make a big difference on how good of a partner you are to your distributors. And so it's really important to ensure that you're giving all the tools necessary for the distributors to be able to work with you, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I have a story that just popped in my mind that's kind of related. So I live in a house that was built in 1904. So it's a really old house, and we just had radiator heat. And we worked with a company to install a brand new heating and air system and cut in the walls and put new ductwork and everything in. So they got the whole system done. and they used a new pump that was like an off-brand name pump for pumping the water out. And we kept for like a couple of weeks having all of these faults, and they couldn't figure it out. And then finally they're like, oh, well, we just, we're using this cheaper part, and it seemed like it was exactly the same, but we're going to end up just scrapping ever doing that again. And we'll just keep going with the name brand that we've always been using previously. And it's just kind of interesting because that brand reputation from that company, the fact that the distributor even offered something that failed is kind of a mark against the distributor that they were working with.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely,
the more that you're established as a brand, even if the product ultimately ends up being the same, there's a certain level of risk involved with a distributor even offering a part like that, because this guy that's installing the system was really kind of upset that they even sold him that product to begin with, and that they would offer it to him when it just completely failed. And I think they even put two of them in, and they both failed. So it's like a huge pain point. So having that brand helps you, but it also is valuable for the distributor themselves when you've created that brand perception.
You're absolutely right. The distributor has a reputation to uphold too, right? I mean, they are the ones servicing the end user. So if they sell a faulty product, like you say, it shines a negative light on them. And, we deal with that with our motor industry quite a bit too. We have motors that are, already predefined. Like I said, in the industrial world, we have NEMA, and they say that, dimensions have to be this, and it has to perform in this way. And, there's other competitors that try to get into our market space here, and they build the motor exactly how it's supposed to be built. But because they don't have those relationships with the channel partners, their products never become a major threat, within our industry. Can they jump on to Amazon or, other types of media and try to sell it? Absolutely. Are they going to be very successful? Not on a wide scale, I think. So that brand reputation, even for commodity parts, industrial commodity parts, plays a big role.
Yeah. So one other thing I want to touch on this, just some of the factors that you would use in positioning the product is you kind of mentioned it, but I think they kind of go together depending on the situation, but the availability and country of origin, what role do those two play in how you position your product?
Well, especially today's market, it's really critical. We have chokes in our supply chain. We have a lot of stuff coming from overseas. And if you're a manufacturer that relies on factories overseas, then if something happens in your supply chain and it's complex, you become an unreliable manufacturer. And so what we are starting to see is our customers are willing to pay 15-20% more of a premium for a made in USA or a product that meets a Buy American Act, for instance. It does hold the premium. So it's not a like for like. It's not just a motor that sits on a shelf. Where that's made and where it comes from plays a role. And our end users are specifying it too. We have, OEMs as well that say, we prefer, our first choice is a made in USA because of the reliability and supply chain issues. And as an OEM, they have an overall manufactured cost, and so if they're able to meet Buy American too, does that give them an advantage? So it's this trickle down, effect where the higher made in USA components that you're able to build with, it helps your upstream, if you will, OEMs and everybody sell their products as well. So it makes it marketable. Yeah,
and it's kind of interesting because before availability was a factor in whether something was made in the USA, but I think, before 2020, it was kind of like, maybe it's a couple extra days, or, if it's a lot of products, maybe it's a couple extra weeks, nothing too crazy.
Now we're talking like months and months, right? I mean, with stuff sitting on boats it just doesn't get accepted into the U.S. Supply chain, it seems like.
Yeah. And then you have the opportunity cost involved with that too. So before it was like, okay, well, this is a cheaper product, and so we're willing to wait a couple extra weeks, and maybe even with the availability, it'll be okay for them to not be quite as available, not quite as available because of the price. But then going back to the low cost idea, now it's starting to be a factor to say, well, maybe it is actually lower cost in the long run to have something manufactured in the USA because we can actually get you the products. We're going to have them warehoused in the US, and we can put it on a truck and get it over to you. Whereas that product that you bought for 15 or 20% less is stuck in the harbor in LA, and they can't get it off, and they can't give you a timeline on when that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what process do you use for deciding on a go-to market strategy for, these more commodity parts or components in the industrial space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, most of our products are commoditized to a certain degree, but within that, we try to differentiate it as best as we can, right? And when that's not even possible, sometimes you just can't be the lowest price person in the market. Then what do you do? And if you don't have a positioning statement or you can't stand behind it, sometimes you have to look at your portfolio and say, does it fit? Can we really stand behind this product? Do we need to take it out of our offering? But, again, it's not just about the purchase price. It's about everything else that comes around it. So are you able to market, reliability? Are you able to market serviceability? Are you able to market, lead times and stuff like that? Those do become, a key differentiator, whether that's not product, differentiation. It's your overall offering, I think, and your brand reputation. So it does play a role and, when you position it, that's what you kind of hone in on in your marketing story. You talk about, this product is made in the USA. It meets the Buy American Act. We have local supply chain and don't worry about, what's going on in the market right now. We have the product in stock. And that is a compelling and very strong, position to have in the market. Again, not everything will fall into that position, but sometimes, it's, you got to work with your sales channel again, your distributors, and work within the margin there. Again, the purchase price that you're offering to the market usually isn't the end price. It goes through all these different touch points, if you will. There's OEMs that touch it. There's system integrators. There's distributors. It's a complex channel too, and so everybody has to be in alignment, I think. And just because you're doing a price increase, for instance, doesn't mean that everybody down the channel needs to do that as well. And I think there's a little bit of storytelling that goes a long way. It's not just, if you break it down to just price, it's hard to market your product. Or if you're just looking at all the main features, it's always going to be hard to market that product because it's commoditized. And so you do have to kind of talk about the creativity of it. We talk about the bearings and the seals and the finishes. And, if something is washed down, what does that mean? Is it easy to clean? Is it, does not corrode? Is it all stainless? Is it, those are some features, and it's not just the features, but what that means to the end users and connecting the dots there, I think is going to go a long way.
Yeah. So as you're going to figure out some of that information, because that's really, really helpful to kind of think through what some of those differentiating factors are and kind of get an idea of what that looks like. So, there's, in my mind, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more if we were to really spend 3 hours diving into this conversation, but, two factors would be, when you're going to look for how to differentiate these products, you probably want to do some internal research and some external research. You kind of mentioned, looking at your portfolio of products, and so that's going to start on the internal side, where you're kind of looking at what you have. And I think one thing that's interesting about that is, that's kind of popped in my mind as we've been talking about this, is you can create a new product, but is that product going to increase your bottom line, or is it going to end up cannibalizing a different product line that you already have? So is it going is introducing this new product line going to open up a new market, or is it going to increase a market that you already have, or is it just going to if you introduce a mid-range product, is that just going to cannibalize your premium product? And in that case, deciding which one of those should go, and maybe the market's moving and you need to get rid of the premium product and offer something that's lower cost. But you might also just destroy your margins by introducing something that you don't need to.
Absolutely. I think, cannibalizing your own product isn't always bad as long as there's a long-term strategy involved with that. If another, if for instance, you have two products that are very similar in nature, but one really is positioned in a long-term strategy of whether that's modularization or something like that in the long run, it's beneficial to the the company, it's beneficial to the end user and the customers at the end of the day, because you're cleaning up your supply chain. So there's things that are internal that help with the product, and there's other things, aspects that are not always seen from the customer's perspective, I think. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to internal research, we definitely do, use our own internal sales as a sounding board. If our internal sales feels like there's two exactly same products, they're not going to push both of them. And one or both, can eventually, not be marketed, in the way we want it, and we'll lose out to a competitor, for instance. So an internal sounding board is very important. And if they don't know how to differentiate one product over another, then we have a problem. And same thing for our sales channels. We'll go to our distributors and present those products to them as well. And if they can't really understand the difference between why are you selling me one product over another and what's the difference between these two, they're not going to push it, because shelf space is very important to them, and they're not going to stock the same products over and over.
Yeah.
And so I think, your internal research and understanding where you're positioning your product is critical. If you have two of the same products, if you can't give them two different stories though, and position one higher and one lower, for instance, in terms of pricing and the storytelling behind it, then you're going to struggle in the market. One can definitely be a decoy price. You can have all the bells and whistles on we'll use a washdown motor, for instance. Everything is stainless, the nuts and bolts and everything internal. Does a customer really need all that? Maybe for, 5% of their applications in a poultry plant or something may use something like that. The rest of the plant may be, a general purpose motor is sufficient enough. But, you put a mid-grade level in there where it has stainless steel, maybe hardware, but not everything is stainless. Maybe the end bells and stuff is maybe aluminum. Is that okay for them? Yeah, and if you price it in a way, then that premium product becomes a decoy price, and people are willing to pay $600 instead of $700, and is that a bad thing? Not always, and again, it depends on who your customer is. That end user may get the $700 motor, and your OEM may say, this is really what I want.
Yeah.
It's $600. And you may have another slew of, different type of washdown products, but how you position that, is going to be important in your storytelling. And price is part of storytelling as well. It's how you position the product as well. So
yeah, that's excellent.
And looking at your competitors too. Sometimes you're not always comparing like to like, and ensuring that, my product is the equivalent as that competitor's product, and being very open about that in the market is going to help, because sometimes, they don't really compare like for like, and that's when you get hurt sometimes. And you want to make sure that you're positioned the proper way, and marketing, I think, and the storytelling behind it is what's going to position you correctly.
Yeah, and those different prices can help you to anchor the people who are looking at your products, either higher or lower. So if you are selling the lower cost solution, you might want to have one that's super high end, so that they go, oh wow, this one's really a deal, and maybe the cost on it isn't even that different for you, and you're only going to sell 2% of that higher end motor, but the fact that you have it helps them to kind of anchor, and maybe even anchor into that. Providing that high end might help you to anchor a medium solution and upsell them from the low end up to the medium one, because they go, well, it seems like we could use something that's better than the low end. We don't necessarily want to go that far, but we're also not going to go to the super high end products, and then could help them to kind of maybe settle on a middle ground product also, when you have multiple options and everything like that. Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, and just to kind of summarize some of the things you're saying, it's, you have all of these different kind of tools in your toolkit as a marketer, and what you're looking for is, what are the areas that are unique based on our internal research, looking at our portfolio and the things that we have, and understanding our products, then looking externally at your partner channels, distributors, what are they offering right now? What are they willing to offer? Do they see a way to add this to their product line, or are they not going to be willing to? And then looking at, customers, prospects, what do they need? What are they looking for? Do you have something that really solves a pain point in the market? And, or are you creating something because internally it feels like a good idea, but maybe the market doesn't actually want it? And then finally, what are our competitors doing? Maybe it isn't always best to make decisions based on what your competition is doing, but you should certainly understand their competing products and what they're doing and how they price it, so that when you release it to the market, your sales team doesn't get destroyed, when they have a
That's right.
competitor that has the exact same thing for half the cost. They need to have a story around why that is. And if you
Hmm.
don't know that option even exists from your competitor, then you're going to put your sales team in a really bad spot. So then it's taking all of those different factors. And then, the fun of marketing is then saying, well, which of these features are the most compelling for this exact product in this industry, and crafting a story so that you can say, um, give your sales team the tools they need to really land deals with that new product that you're offering. So to just kind of cap it off here, what's an example of one of your parts that's kind of more in that commodity space that you guys have been able to differentiate? And maybe you could just kind of walk through how you decided on the different factors, what the pain was in the market that you were solving, and then the result of kind of what that looked like.
We have an example where, well, most of our motors are predefined in the market by an association. So it's really hard to differentiate those commodities, but we do a lot of test marketing too. So we have a lot of VIP customers and channel partners. And so, for instance, we will do, obviously product testing and stuff, and we will prove that our product performs in a way that it's supposed to. And being able to get buy-in from a reputable end user or OEM goes a long way as well. If you know that a certain end user prefers your product, then we can definitely leverage that brand name and experience, and then say, Coca-Cola or McDonald's or whoever it is wants this motor, and they're willing to pay a premium, and they drive it through their sales channel, where the OEM is then specifying that particular motor for that end user. And, anytime we can get a case study like that, we can duplicate that success, around to similar customers in a way.
Yeah, that
so
makes
anytime
sense.
there's an opportunity to tell a story, again, marketing is about storytelling at the end of the day. And whether that is proving that your product is performing the way it needs to, where there's actual lab test results, on your motor, and then, getting an end user to use that. So you may have to offer your products for free, and get them to test market it and use it on their actual applications, and show and prove, hey, I've saved this much energy costs on this motor, or maybe it just drops right in and it's easy to maintain, or maybe it's certain features about it that they like that you didn't really quite know at first, but your customers point out for you. That anytime we get those kind of feedbacks, we kind of latch onto those stories, and we try to tell it over and over and over, in a way that is easy for our sales folks and our channels to absorb them, because anytime you can associate positive experience with your product, even if it's a commodity product, you're going to build some credibility and reliability within that. And, not everything in your portfolio is going to be a star product. Not everything is going to be differentiated.
Absolutely.
And there's positionings, you have stars and you have cash cows and your dogs and everything, and everything has a different story. And I think, as a marketer, you have to pull the right one out of the bag and mix and tell a story behind it. And there's always a spin to it. And it's not lying. It's just, it's storytelling, and it's telling the truth about, whether it's a small component that made a difference, though, I think, is very important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it kind of goes back to that brand reputation too. If you have those VIP customers that you're working with that are requesting those parts, your parts, and they're from the OEM, and you're able to create, one thing you touched on there that I think is really important in marketing in general is, instead of saying, hey, we have this great idea for a product coming from R&D, and then you go, cool, we don't have anything like that in our portfolio at all. Let's mass produce it. And then you mass produce it, and your distributors say, we're not going to put that on the shelf. And now you have a huge stockpile of it. And,
that's right.
Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory, tooling costs, all the things that went into it. Instead, what you just said was you test market it. So you work with a customer that you think it would be a good fit for. They put it in, you get test results from that. You create a case study out of it. And, maybe you find out from that it's just not going to be that different, and you can't create a story around it. And then you go, let's nix this product. Or maybe you do that, and then you go, wow, there's this whole other area that we didn't even realize that they would get. And then you have a really differentiated story to tell based off of something that maybe you didn't even know, like you said, about energy consumption, or how easy it was to replace when it needed to be, when it needed a replacement part, or whatever the case was. Those are powerful. And then when you have a case study around that, that builds that brand reputation, and that helps you across the board for all of your portfolio products, not just that individual one. So that's awesome.
Recently we launched a motor, and it's called the 𝗖𝗍 Titanium, and we'll have a video at the end of the month that's going to be released with this. But it's a highly efficient motor. It's really energy efficient. You pair it with a drive, you save all this energy cost. And it's not that we're the first ones that came up with this motor, and there's a lot of other motor manufacturers out there, or tech companies that want to save the world, right? And so you have these Silicon Valley companies that try to come up with these big ideas on how they're going to save, Amazon rainforests and stuff, and with their motors. And brand reputation is important. They just don't have a position in the market that is similar to ours. You can't just pop up out of nowhere and say, hey, I have a great product, without the right sales channel strategy, for instance. And so, you may have a grand idea, but if you don't have a means to the market, or a go-to-market strategy for that, or a brand reputation to stand behind, it's really going to be hard to push your product. This product, 𝗖𝗍 Titanium, is, like I said, it's not a brand new, there are other efficient products out there, but us as a company, as ABB, we've established ourselves as a reputable motor manufacturer in the US. We have #1 market share within the NEMA market here in the US. And so when we come out with a highly efficient product, and we have a very differentiated strategy behind it, it holds clout. There's a reputation behind it. We know that we can mass produce it. We do it locally. There's a lot of reliability tied to that, and brand reputation. And so I think that's a big difference between an idea and execution too. It's not just about having a differentiated product. That whole concept of if you build it, they will come doesn't quite apply in industrial marketing, because it's all about the relationships that you have. And so, this 𝗖𝗍 Titanium is a pretty cool product. I like it because it's, we could tell a lot of stories about it, because it is different. Is it the only one in the market? No. But is it coming from a very reputable company that stands behind their brand? Absolutely. And I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting as like a cap to the final finale of this conversation here is, you've talked about ways to differentiate, but part of it's also just understanding the value that you bring with your brand. And so in this case, there's other people that were first to the market with it. There's other people who have come up with all these innovative ideas, but because you guys are the established player, you're almost able to wait them out and let them test the market and see if it's going to work. And then you can step in and eat their lunch in a lot of cases, just because you guys have a reputation already. And understanding that, and understanding the weight behind that reputation, and your sales channels, and your partners and everything, that is differentiation in and of itself. And if you don't have that position, and you're on the other side, and you're competing against one of these larger manufacturers that has a reputation, then you really have to get creative with some of those other factors that we talked about, with your pricing strategy, or what are other things that you're going to offer on top of the motor itself, whether that's your support, or, maybe you go on site as the company and do maintenance or whatever. You have to get really creative with some of these alternatives, but it's pretty cool when you're in the position to be the established player, where you can kind of step in and have a great product that's, you can stand behind the reliability, and that really does differentiate it just in and of itself, and kind of speaks to the value of building your brand reputation, and the importance of that in the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. This is a fun conversation, and I think it's going to be really valuable for our audience.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.